Okay. Hey everyone. See a lot of people here, which is good. So first of all, I'm not the only speaker for this session. we somehow forgot to add Adam, and I did a very last minute change here because I had you as a senior engineer. Sorry. But to set the stage, who am I? Most of you know me. I guess I won't go that much with my presentation. Former product manager on satellite, today in SSA, because I'm a bit more of a field person and decided to go in the field. So now I'm working more with Lightspeed inside satellite. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about things that I fully don't understand. So to be fairly honest, I'm not expert. I have 2 years of experience with AI, not 20. And I'm doing certain assumptions with everything you're gonna see here. But also my goal is always to have a cool thing, and the outcome is to have the wow effect, right? So that's part of the way I'm doing things. So we're certainly going to talk about Agentic AI, and I think Marek did a very good job in basically setting the stage. And there might be a couple of things that I might be repeating here, but I think they're important. And last but not least, what you're going to see here is basically a rehearsal for my RH1 presentation. So I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone, hopefully. So let's start with the thing. All right. So I think Marek already mentioned, and there's some, the key questions around when we're talking about AI and agentic, specifically, what LLMs to use, what SLMs to use. Shall we build something versus buying something? That's a very good question. Well, where is our AI service going to run? Is it going to run on-prem, or is going to be custom? Well, the answer, as always, with Red Hat solutions, is, well, it depends. We've been getting a lot of these questions. Do we manage some RHEL with depends, right? So before we jump basically, and you just hear me talking more about satellite because I'm just biased, but and I understand we're in Foreman here. So whenever I mention satellite, just think about Foreman, right? So translate it in your heads, make a set rule. So before we jump basically into any demos, and I promise you we have demos here, and hopefully they will be impressive. I have some recorded, some live demos. Can you imagine? I want to stage a bit what we are gonna talk about. Right. So over the past years, basically a lot of organizations were treating AI, as something that is basically sitting next to their tools, right? And it has been like the copy-paste, experience, which I think still continues today for a lot of tasks that also Marek spoke about. And what are potentially the next steps, right? So before, however, we go to the next steps, it's really helpful to see how we humans basically interact with AI. And I think some organizations, including Red Hat, we're taking steps basically to embed AI inside the tools. And you've been hearing a lot about Lightspeed. You've been hearing a lot of MCP servers. That's one of the elephants in the room today, of course. To make our tools or any tools basically AI ready. Let's put it that way. What we're focused on today is the stage after agentic workflows. And sorry, I'm just moving around and escaping from the mic. this is where AI doesn't just respond, to questions, but it's actually also participating in operations, right? And again, those safeguards, that Marek mentioned, they're super important. That's why we're taking steps. For example, the Foreman MCP server first is just a read only, right? Because we need to learn how to work with it. We need to learn, what are the results from it. So this is well, I think also is important to mention is a big part of designing the agentic workflows is choosing the right models, as Marek also mentioned. Some are requiring reasoning, some are requiring really small specialized models that are doing certain tasks, right? In our demo today, we do have actually the usage of 2 models, so it's really modest, but again, is something that really pertains to the idea of, well, use what you can, let's say, locally, and what saves you money, to put it that way. And when you need something more, well, reach out to the cloud, maybe, right? So that's pretty much the principle that today's demo is created. So this really brings us to the purpose of today's demos. We're going to show basically what this can look like with well, real world use cases. I think we have 4 use cases. One is really only satellite related. The other 3 are Foreman, right? Because Foreman does not care a lot about subscriptions, but we have customers in Red Hat that care about subscriptions. So just to set the stage. And the whole thing here really caters of basically not just AI next to satellite, but basically multi-agentic workflow that maybe showcases a bit also what also Marek mentioned is about taking the decisions. So they're essentially 5 agents. One is taking the decisions what to do next. Before we get there, of course, the key considerations, open source, is one of them. Infrastructure, NOS footprint, where agentic capabilities live across the portfolio, customer maturity and market evolution and whatnot. There is a lot that companies basically have to take into consideration before actually going, to customers with their solutions. So from that perspective, there is certainly the human in the loop. It's really important to have reporting and auditing, orchestration as well. Well, it's also a good thing that Marek mentioned them, because I can save some time in basically not going through these. Well, we are using the same sources of information, right? I mean, we're not going to say something different. But also it's important to think about, there aren't, abstract questions. Well, you're going to see today how, well, satellite Foreman tackles exactly some of the challenges that, for example, either Red Hat customers or users of Foreman are having. It's one of the things is obviously lowering the barrier, for people understanding, let's say the product they're using, or the application they're using, or their environments, cater to best practices, and whatnot. So without further ado, I will jump into the use cases. I just want to tell you, what are the use cases before we go into the demos. Right. So the first use case is subscription compliance and analysis. So essentially, there is an agent in the whole workflow that can do certain analysis based on the agent configuration. It's not actually configuration, but instructions, and to provide some insights on what is the consumption of certain environment, organization, basically of for that customer. And create recommendations. For example, does the customer need to actually start talking to their account executive, etc. And are they over-consuming, under-consuming, etc. And this is a very, very well-known use case. Now, today I'm using satellites data tomorrow that's not going to be only satellites data. It's going to be, let's say, satellite plus subscription manager, APIs, MCP servers, you name it, right? Because it's really important to combine the data from multiple sources. This always helps. So that's one. The second use case is around security and vulnerability. It's not always the case that an ordinary system administrator, they have to do, how to behave, how to actually maintain their systems and cater to the security posture. So that's what the second agent does here. Will generate recommendations based on the environment that Foreman or satellite has set up. Right. Next to that, as I mentioned, we have 4 use case related agents. There is one thing that we have been building, and not only within like sales, but also within product engineering, and that's what a standard operating environment means, for let's say customers, users, etc. What are the best practices, and so on, how their systems need to be managed, how to basically configure even, Foreman or satellite to distribute, content to those systems. So the first question that comes there is, hey, is my actual environment compliant to all these recommendations? Well, I can tell you that mine is not, right? And I know that, but there are people that absolutely have no idea what the standard operating environment can be, right? So I think this is where agents can help really with a simple question. Hey, tell me what is standard operating environment. And once I understand, maybe from whatever half pager or something, I can actually also ask the question, hey, is my environment actually compliant to that? Right. And maybe people with expertise of 5+ years, will be able to tell you that out of the box. But imagine a Windows admin going, into a Linux space and needing to manage RHEL, let's say. So that's that. And the last one is host level operational. This is a more generic thing. That thing actually has been born as in, well, if I can't hit any kind of agent, specific agent that is focused, let's say, on vulnerability or standard operating environment or subscriptions, what do I do? Well, I need to be able still to respond somehow, be able to provide general information, let's say, status of a host or something, or just give you instructions how to work with satellite. Imagine us in tailored documentation for you for certain workflow. And we know AI is good in that. And to the point Marek was doing, of course, you should not believe absolutely everything you see there, even though there are a lot of guardrails that can be placed and so on and so forth. But it actually gives you really nice direction, what you can actually look at and what you can potentially do. So the other thing, I'm going to call Adam in a second, so that I'm not the only one talking here, is I also wanted to show you and tell you what's under the hood of today's, let's say, today's demo. And that's the setup. So we are, well, there are a couple of products and applications, and there are probably things that I have forgotten to add here. Well, I'm using satellites. It's just because I have satellites, right? But it doesn't need to be the case. Of course, everything you're seeing here will be working with Foreman. It's just a Foreman MCP server, it's being used. So that's that. NA10 is, or Nathan. Who has heard about NA10? Cool. All right. Anyway, just a few words about it. It's, well, open source, not fully officially, let's say, adhering to the OSI model. They have some special license on top of that, but it's in general open source project that you can use for your own purposes. I think there is also something about commercial usage. I didn't go that much into that because for putting a POC together, that might be any other framework. And I know people are. I know a person that I'm working with for another H1 talk that is kind of using KAP for that purpose. So, or a playbook, right? So that's just a automation framework, that allows you to workflows. It's just easier to use than AAP. I'm sorry. I had to state that, at least for me. So what else? Llama CPP, where I'm running a arguably open source model with open weights, where there are a lot of debates. Is it really open source because you don't have the code actually? Because that's just kind of configuration. But anyway, that's maybe the most used open source model in the world. Running it locally at home. The 120 billions model. I do have an RTX 3090 plus CPU offloading. It actually is running quite well with 30 tokens per second. Measured this morning. And then of course I'm using Gemini because that's what I can use in the company. I'm using the free tier that I'm allowed 200 requests per day, which I'm usually exhausting, but that's what it is. And of course, RHEL and Podman as technologies. So I do have a VM with satellite and MCP server running on satellite. There is the Llama CPP is running on the host where I am running the VM for satellite, while Gemini is in the cloud. Obviously, then I have Nginx web server, and I do have NA10 container running on Podman, which is running the multiple basically agents inside it. Adam, do you want to tell us something more about Foreman and MCP server?
Sure. I'm glad to. And I might steal the screen sharing.
Yeah, please do so.
For a moment. Leave it on for a while. So, hello, I'm Adam Růžička. I'm a software engineer on satellite. I was one of the authors of the Foreman MCP server that you can now use with Foreman or with satellite. So I'll really be talking only about this one tiny little box.
But that's the most important box.
Well,
in this workflow.
It's turned out to be a apparently rather good building block, it seems. So I might repeat a couple of things which are already said, but MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a protocol meant to be used between the real world and AI applications to allow the AI applications to access the world. And it's meant to be used in both directions, right? It can be used to get the data from the outside world into the AI application so that it can work with them. And at the same time, it can be used to allow the AI application to make changes in the outside world. We started with the MCP server. So there is an implementation of this thing, right? It can talk to satellite, it can talk to Foreman. It's not really specific to any set of plugins or whatever. Call out to ethics people, guess it could work against Orcarino as well. There are no boundaries or reasons why it shouldn't work. So we put together this server, and it's rather minimalistic. It provides 4 tools. The tools are the things that the AI application can then choose to use in certain scenarios. For comparison, the official GitHub MCP server has like 50. We don't have all that many, and 3 out of the 4 are only for getting documentation inside the AI application. So the expectation was that you prompt the model to do something, the model will read the documentation to figure out how it can be done, and it will use the last remaining tool to actually talk to Foreman's or Satellite's API. We've got a question about that, and even when we were starting with this, there were already blog posts out there on the internet saying that just in a MCP server isn't all that great idea. That it's better to have focused tools rather than mirroring the API one by one or exactly one-to-one. But we didn't really want to constrain ourselves only being able to do specific things, so we exposed the entire API as a single tool. Apparently, it's turned out rather well. It seems to work well. As Tiho already said, currently the access it gives you is to read only. We still wanted to keep the human in the loop and make this, for now, only for reporting purposes only. So that's why we did that. I'll steal the screen sharing, maybe. Okay, there we go. Shout out to the documentation. The use is documented in the Foreman documentation. The way we ship that is we build container images which are in upstream published in Quay. For satellite, there are branded builds which are Red Hat registry. And the expected usage is that you, as a user, deploy the MCP server on your machine, ideally on the same machine where you run the AI application, and you just point it to a remote Foreman or satellite instance, which is what this is showing. Some under the hood details. For a while, we also considered having the MCP server be like a built-in part of Foreman or satellite. But from our brief experimentation with that, it wasn't exactly all that great. So we went this route where the MCP server is a standard. A nice benefit we get out of that, essentially for free, is that you can use the same MCP server and you can point it at different versions of Foreman or satellite. In the satellite world, it did already go out. Have we already released this in downstream?
6.8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in the tech preview for 6.18, but strictly technically speaking, you can take the MCP server and point it at 6.12, which is end of life for a long time ago already, and it should just work. There's nothing that would rely on certain features being present on the server. So it's untested, but it should just work. I'll mention a couple more things about the actual usage from what I've seen and what I've heard. Because the MCP server talks to satellite, it needs to have some sort of credentials to authenticate and be authorized. So the way it currently works is you configure your MCP client to send specific HTTP headers to the server, and the server passes them to the backend server to authenticate with. As I said, it should be completely read-only. But word of caution, if you're using, I've seen that happen only in VS Code, and I assume it could happen in all the other VS Code derivatives. Like the AI integration inside that editor can view the configuration of the editor. So if you configure those headers in the configuration files of that editor, the AI agent can actually read them and decide that it wants to do something which wouldn't be allowed by the read-only access through the MCP server. So it just builds a curl command using those credentials that are somewhere there in those config files and asks you, hey, is it okay if I run this? So just a word of caution, it can happen. And if the AI asks you to run curl, that's not the MCP server at all. So yeah, it can happen, but I've heard it works reasonably well even that way. So yeah, there's that. There were some things I was kind of pleasantly surprised with, and that is Foreman's APIs, when you ask for a set of resources, contain a couple of fields. One of those fields is how many resources in total match the search query that was provided for that request. Oops. And then there's another field which contains all the details. And I think it was GPT 4.1 that was the first one I saw do this. If I asked how many, let's say, how many hosts are there which have their name start with letter A? And GPT 4.1 was the first one that I saw to actually set per page to 0, so that the response it got from the server didn't contain any details, but it contained those fields with the counts, which was really interesting to see. And it kind of surprised me in a good way. Another thing that I'll briefly mention about the usage patterns, and maybe I'll show that. In here I have Cloud Code. It's pointed at the Foreman MCP server, and I can query an instance. Now, usually, and I'll bump it a little bit more. Usually, the models aren't all that great when you ask about something which doesn't really exist. And it just keeps trying and trying and trying to find a thing which just isn't there. So just bear that in mind, that it can happen, and it looks kind of odd. So if I ask, how many hosts are there in a subnet called something, and I run it, see, and that's how the actual usage looks in Cloud Code. It will tell you that it's trying to use an API get action. It's looking for subnets. Action is indexed, so it wants to get back, and it passes on a search. Now, that search is correct. That's good. And I said at the beginning that the expectation was that the AI application would read the documentation first, instead of just eyeballing things. And it just happens to eyeball things with surprising accuracy. So that was another kind of nice surprise. So if I allow this to run it, it will talk to the MCP server. The MCP server will talk to the Foreman instance. That the response is that the action index on resource subnets executes successfully. And the response said that totally there are 3 subnets. There are 0 subnets matching the search query, and there are no details because there are none matching the search. But the AI doesn't take no for an answer. And it just goes, okay, let's try finding any subnet which contains the thing I asked about as a subset. And if I run it, again, there will be none. And it takes like 3 or 4 attempts before it finally admits that, okay, there probably are none. So that's a case where it doesn't really work, but as long as some of the data you're asking about is there, it works kind of well. Yeah. Here it gave up and said there are 3 other subnets. None of them is the one you asked about. Yeah. Okay, we have 15 minutes left. So I would probably stop the screen sharing and give the imaginary microphone back to Tiho. I have this demo instance in here. It will be freely available here in the room. So if you want to, please do come play with that. Thank you.
All right, and I'm back now. We'll get to the real deal. A couple of layers above what what Adam was showing, for sure. Just before we dive into the demo, this is pretty much the pipeline that I have in N8N. I know it's not visible here, but I don't know actually. Can I do that? Okay, there is a mouse. All right. So as I mentioned, I have an agent here. My input, basically a webhook, which when I'm getting the requests, this is my router agent, which takes the decision what to do next based on what the user is asking. That agent also takes care of setting up some variable evaluated by the switch module here, and then that goes to the different agents as I have here. So subs analysis agent, vulnerability analysis agent, standard, and everything else. As I mentioned, I'm using 2 different types of LLMs. One is here where it says OpenAI. Sorry, it says OpenAI, but that's basically the Llama CPP. So that's completely fine. MCP, once it comes to MCP, MCP servers basically require, maybe it's better to show the actual thing. MCP servers require quite a bigger context, basically, with a 32K context won't work, right? But this is not using MCP server, this agent here, so it's fine. And then for all the other agents, I'm using Gemini because of the bigger context in the communication. This is my setup for the MCP server, which is basically running on my satellite box. I'm using it without any authentication because N8N cannot do multiple headers yet. So I'm using Nginx with a reverse proxy to set the headers. Workarounds, but it works like the charm. And maybe to skip the other 2 slides is this is pretty much how configuration of one of the agents looks like. So what's the purpose? What is the ask? And really long instructions there. Now instructions are built with Clot for the agents because Clot seems to be the best for doing that. And it's really nice working with it. ChatGPT. This same workflow can work basically with a chat window as well. So I have testing place, like testing the agentic work. Want to do this through a web page or something like that, right? So going back to this, this is the slide that I'm going to skip. Well, demo time. Now I do have a pre-recorded demo which captures some of these. And then I have a live demo, which is not obviously recorded. I tested a couple of times, so hopefully everything will be working. Am I on VPN? I'm on VPN because everything works at home. So, right, so coming from that side, let's see the demo. All right, cool. I'll be pausing the video from time to time. By the way, what you're seeing here is a skimmed user interface from satellites. As I mentioned, Clot is quite good in this generating a UI, from screenshots. So basically, all these systems that you're seeing here are the systems that are on my satellites at home. Right. So I just took the screenshot and and used Claude to generate a web page. Everything, of course. The other thing is I put yesterday, the whole thing you're seeing here, I put it yesterday in about 6 hours. So with pipelines, with the web page and everything together. I had the idea, I did not execute it on it. So right. So what you're seeing here is an idea where we can have a AI agent in Foreman or in Satellite, AI assistant. Sorry, bad wording. Which one should be able to interrogate or ask, for certain information. So the first use case that I'm doing, of course, I'll ask how it can help me, even though it was saying, how it can help me. And it's advice it can help with reporting vulnerabilities, satellite auditing, and whatnot. All right, so this is great. Can you tell me how much, let's say, my environment is compliant with the standards? Is compliant with subscription utilization, because then we have the next use case. And what happens now? I'm basically firing this up. It takes some time. It's sped up. This is calling my webhook in the backend. As I mentioned, I'm getting this nice report there for all my organizations. I have 2 organizations: home organization and WIS, with advisories of hey, you're let's say overusing, or something like that, right? So maybe you need to do something within next time, you're doing your contracts. As I mentioned, this is more a satellite Red Hat related use case, but all in all, you're getting really nice recommendations. So for me, this is great, but also I'm interested to get a bit more information on the infrastructure, right? So analyze my infrastructure, if it's compliant with the standard operating environment. As I mentioned earlier, I had to copy paste these, but anyway, so you see me typing there slowly, a thought process. Now, this analysis takes a bit more time. For example, it took like 4 minutes yesterday to generate it again, and the output is not very nice because my code there stops processing the markdown at some point, but the result is important. So I'm getting an executive summary with the date when this has been generated. Maybe it can be exported later, to a nice PDF. Critical findings there, what actually needs work in terms of my setup, from content use perspective, and other stuff with recommendations, how this can potentially be fixed with the command line, right? So. And with the GUI, by the way. So it was advising basically with using pretty much the same standard as satellite documentation is built, where there is a GUI information and command line. This is quite long, of course. There is a lot desired, let's say, to put the guardrails as well in this agent of how much information should generate and so on. But it nicely gave me a couple of steps on the high level what they need to do. And of course, I maybe had to ask first, what is the standard operating environment, right? So this request will go to the same agent, and I'll get information what this means, from Red Hat perspective. So it's like a carefully defined, controlled computing environment. And of course, this is through the flavor of satellite. So you'll get recommendations on groups, how to use activation keys, how provisioning works, and so on. So what was the next thing that I asked was, can you please tell me, what did I ask? Yeah, okay. If my systems are vulnerable, right? So now we are gonna go through the vulnerability agent. And again, for those that know that we have vulnerability service now in Satellite 6.18, no, this is not using vulnerability service. It's using the errata information from Satellite, because that other thing is not exposed yet. But still, I got quite nice information for some of the systems. I did that only for one organization here, basically saying, oh, there is a critical system that I found there. It's using like content view that is 7 updates older, So there is a lot to be desired. I was playing yesterday, asking, give me the 5 most vulnerable systems, just the list of them. That also works quite nicely. And since we spoke about guardrails, right? So basically, when you're providing an agent, that agent should be, or multi-agents, let's say, pipeline should be really specialized in what basically is urged to do. So I asked, hey, can you please generate me a picture? So the response I got is, I'm sorry, but I can't generate pictures, right? So I just wanted to go with something stupid there. And by the way, this is the routing agent actually takes decision again what can be done or not. Okay, thank you for your help. This is expensive. Of course, you never say thank you, to AI because this just sucks power, right? The response I get: user expressed gratitude, but did not pose a question. It almost said you're a stupid user, but anyway. So that's the recorded part. The thing that I actually extended yesterday after this is I added one more feature in this. So I promise you, this is the same thing as yesterday. So I basically went here and I said, hey, can you please analyze this host for me? Right, so that's pretty much a shortcut, on something that, well, it's kind of a predefined action. Let's say I don't necessarily need to display that, but I went with a very simple thing. If I click there, just use this sentence plus the host name. So what actually does right now is again, it's calling K810. There is a decision taken. What needs to happen with this goes to the proper agent, and since this is not a very heavy task, I got some information here, which of course I can see also from the host itself, but the sweet spots can be already in the recommendations, which is, well, investigate configuration reporting issues. If there are some, apply security errata immediately, review content during lifecycle environment, ensure everything is intended as it is, monitor health, which is a bit of generic thing. But as I said, was that give me the of the top 5 most hosts. I think, yeah, this should work as well. And if it's not working, of course, is my my fault. But there you go, it worked, right? So I've been testing quite a lot, but yeah, this is kind of a practical example of what can be done with a third-party agent, basically using the functionality that Adam has spoken about, the MCP server around Foreman. I'm saying around Foreman because it's not in Foreman, but it's around Foreman or next to Foreman, in satellite, and it's just a case that maybe with a bit of knowledge, actually, people can put something together. Actually, that would make sense. Again, I'm not an expert. I have no idea when I'm writing, a 2 lines comment in Llama CPP, what I'm doing there. It just works for me. That's a black box. But the point is that. AI, and agents are there to stay, and as Marek mentioned, maybe 26, 27 will be the year of those. And I think we have a really good opportunity to work on that and make it available even upfront, to get these kind of the feedback basically from communities, customers, etc. If that's something that actually makes their life easier, right? Because we always need to know what we need to implement. Just exposing an MCP server, it does not always bring directly the value unless you show the way. And I'm putting my product management hat here, but that's just me. Anyway, any questions?
I have a lot of them.
Oh, kill me now. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks for the light demo. That's always.
I'll try with something simple, which is basically running this prompt directly. There certainly might be differences, and this is why I'm saying basically I think the fine tuning of the instructions of an agent is really important. You know, the smaller the agent, the more focused it is, the better it is. I was doing some other AI related workflows. They're more like on the sales side with Salesforce and stuff like that in Snowflake, since it was mentioned, and because Salesforce data lives there. I spent maybe 2-3 weeks playing with those until I basically gave up using LLMs, you know, for let's say mathematical operations and whatnot. So basically, I do have in that workflow there also some codes, JavaScript, because N8N works very well with JavaScript in doing all calculations. I even went further. I'm asking Snowflake to do all the calculations, basically. So I'm running, you know, directly SQL queries there and getting always the same data. Yes, sentences are a bit different, right? But I'm always getting the same numbers, which is important. In this particular case here, because it got generated, we've got Sonia, Carol, Lauren, Irene, Jane. Sonia, Carol, Warren, Irene, Jane.
Yeah.
Now, the idea here is that if the right question basically goes towards the LLM, and the LLM should potentially do exactly the same actions as I have configured there, and pretty much my vulnerability agent has that, which is go and run these kind of Foreman API calls, you know, through MCP, and really putting the guardrails, what exactly you need to do in that, extract this information and that information. I'm expecting that my results are going to be basically the same. Yes, they might be varying a bit. Now, if I go to the standard operating environment analysis, that's a bit more flaky because that's a big task already.
For particular parts, like you mentioned, you have Llama because
Mm-hmm.
degree, but is that from your experience with playing with those?
So I did choose it's the GPT OSS 120 billion model because one of the best, let's say, today that you can normally use locally, right, and runs on a single GPU, etc. So there's some technical considerations as well. Well, it was also a challenge, you know, to make it running locally because the 20 billion model is not going to have the same results. The 20 billion model actually makes my routing agent a bit flaky, you know, sometimes generating errors. Fully get everything, and my routing agent is quite simple. You know, you're a router and you do only this. That's it. You know. So the other reason is I don't want to ship requests to Gemini for this small task because that basically costs me money, let's say, or exhausts, you know, some of the free requests that I have there. So I went with that. I probably can go with another one. And yes, for the big tasks, for the MCP server, I think there are certain recommendations that you need to have at least 128,000 tokens basically supported, which I still can't get and fine tune my Llama CPP to do. I can run it with 64K, still complaining that it's too small for the MCP server because the MCP server throws a lot of documentation.
Regarding this MCP, did you encounter any limitations with our current MCP server implementation?
No, I did not. Maybe because I know how to use it, but I know about other people that encountered limitations, and they were saying it doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So
you mentioned one with the authorization headers.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse proxy, but isn't that actually a good solution? Or is there a way maybe to hard code the credentials somehow?
It should be.
Well, there are multiple ways how
Yeah.
you can deploy that. Standard IO transport. You configure your client to pass the credentials to the server it's about to spawn. So it could be a single. I'm not really sure that's something we should document.
I mean, there are different approaches. If you look at, so I'm using the MCP agent in two different ways. So this is the one that works for me, you know, like this pipeline. But if I want to use Cloud Desktop cannot basically do that because it requires to have actually a HTTPS connection. That's one of the issues, of course. The other issue is Cloud Desktop cannot send headers, and it also. Well, there is a workaround maybe with NPM, you know, to make it use streamable, but I quit with that idea. I'm just basically, if I use in parallel this in Cloud Desktop, I'm actually running another dedicated MCP agent through SSH tunnel, basically a standard out. And thanks to Adam, resolved the problem with the broken certificate. So now my GUI is working always. But yeah.
The specification suggests people should be using OAuth to.
Yeah.
But we don't have that on the Foreman side.
So yeah, exactly.
If we had that on Foreman side, would that help with your?
Yes, yeah. Basically, this thing over here has a configuration for like authentication. You can choose a bearer auth or the header auth. That's only one header, right? This is limitation of this system. If you go for a HTTP client, normal one, because this framework allows it, you can add multiple headers, right? So this framework has limitations. I'm not saying, you know, it should be done that way, but if you go to Cloud Desktop, it will basically just ask for bearer. So you can configure in the paid version, you can configure a connection, you know, to tooling. First of all, SSL, and second of all, it's OAuth or bearer tokens. That's what's supported in general. But yeah, Foreman needs to support that.
Okay. Can you talk a bit more about how your decision?
Do we have time? Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking here.
Just a question.
Yeah, no worries.
How does deciding for subscription go to that agent, and that agent has some descriptions of what
it does? Well, the principle that I'm using here is quite simple, right? It does not. No. So what's happening here is this agent will basically say, hey, I have these available options, because if I say generating pictures, you know, this agent actually can respond back and say, I cannot do that, right? So this is the first kind of guardrails. Then there is some kind of configuration here, you know, respond only with strict JSON, yada yada yada. This is another instruction I'm adding there, and there are the 4 options. So it's like sub-analysis, vulnerability, SOE, satellite, and none. And there is a reason. What happens next is that this agent is actually talking to a structured output. Basically, I'm even forcing the agent to have a structured output which should look this way: agent name, answer, whatever, you know. And what happens next is that in this switch node, I'm getting a variable. Well, basically, I'm reading the variable. So whatever variable comes, if it's equal to SOE or vulnerability or sub-analysis or system sysadmin, satellite sysadmin or nothing. Basically, that's a very simple routing based on a keyword in the JSON output. It actually helps a bit with taking the hard decision where to go. It actually works quite nicely, because if it doesn't, it does the evaluation from top to bottom. If there is nothing about subscriptions or vulnerabilities, etc., it will simply fall back to the generic one, which is instructed answer all the questions on a high level, right? You're not an expert. Well, I mean, you're a satellite admin, let's say, but you're not doing so much analysis. And maybe I can instruct them to be more precise, ask specific questions, yada yada yada.
Last question. Does it mean that you created the new UI because it was too hard to edit? What was the motivation?
Well, the motivation for me is that I'm not a developer, and it took me 10 minutes to have the other UI. That's it. That's the only motivation. And because I already did it with other kind of projects, I just know that this saves a lot of time. And honestly, I don't know if that won't be visible because I need to reshare my screen. But honestly, by just getting the picture and writing, 5 lines of prompt, what I exactly want, because I know what I want. Let's say, it should look that way. I need to have a button there, and this should happen. Yada yada yada. You get that for even under 10 minutes. Depends what you're using. And then of course it's really nice because you have the thing, and especially Claude is good in that, and I think Gemini does the same as well. I want also this kebab, to be expandable and to have that button there, and that button, when I click it, should do this, and that. And by the way, change the webhook URI, to my production one, not to the test one. That's the only motivation. Now, if I had, in which I have, but I didn't think yesterday, and I have the time as well, I can basically connect Claude with GitHub, and maybe go to Foreman space in GitHub and say, there is the code. Take whatever is there for the GUI and try to mimic Foreman GUI or something like that. Maybe that would have worked as well. It should.
Would it help if we had a nice and easy to set up development environment?
Yeah, I think that's doable, because then it's also easy. And again, I'm not a developer, you folks, know me, but I can hack things, put things together somehow, right? So they work actually. I would then maybe take the approach of embedding, that simple thing that I did in just iframe or something, to make it usable there. Yes, maybe for RH1 I can do that later. But again, for 6 hours yesterday, that's everything I was able to put together. So I've been, as I said, I've been playing a lot, and this is certainly not the biggest pipeline I did with this thing. This is my account analyzer, basically, that has actually a multi-agentic consecutive workflow, because it goes through active subs, opportunities one, ROI data with some codes, with getting through summary agents and detailed agents, then merging the output of these into together, generating executive summary from the output of all the other agents, essentially. Doing that through Markdown, and finally generating a document. Well, I can show it after the recording. But anyway, so this part, I think it's really important to understand when to use an agent, when not to use an agent, and as I mentioned, calculations and things like that. Certainly not to use an agent. I think the MCP APIs are amazing in that. I learned here basically that, and again, this is agent's configuration with actual SQL queries. That I'm sending. To. Do you think I can write this SQL query? No. Yeah. But what I can do is get that thing generated, and I'm using MCP Server or Snowflake in this case. Get that generated and actually be able to test it, because I actually can go, to Snowflake's interface, test it, and understand if it actually delivers what I need, It's a bit of copy paste, of course, putting me back to like pure one, but again, it's like verifying, as Marek was saying, verifying what actually is there. I'm doing only searches, right? So it's a bit more safer not to rewrite the database. But yeah, it's amazing what one can actually achieve in such a short time. All right. Any other questions? No one's sleeping. That's good.
Yeah, I have a documentation question.
Uh-huh.
How are you linking the documentation between the MC? How does it work?
So right now, what you're seeing here, let's say, is first of all the agent configuration, which is, by the way, generated on top of satellite documentation. So it's like agents generating configurations for agents. That's pretty much how it works. So you go in Claude, you create a project, you throw in all satellite 617 documentation plus other context, and you go. You explain, I'm working with that framework, yada yada yada. I need this and that, and this is the agent I'm doing right now. So part of the documentation is embedded there, and what Gemini will do afterwards is basically will also it use its own knowledge. However, what I can do in the pipeline over here, and this is not only for documentation, it's for anything. In this pipeline, basically where the agents are, I can add tools, and those tools can be very well docs too. Right, so this tool actually it's like a rack pipeline already. So in this doc tool, I can basically say, oh, by the way, go in this docs, thingy, and use the information from there, which basically puts me in the next thing, which I wanted to do but didn't have the time, is in the vulnerability agent to connect it to a maintenance plan of a fictive customer, of imaginary customer, and their maintenance plans, we update once a month, blah, 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 that's what we do. And actually compare that not only with the satellite's configuration, but also with the process of the customer. So the recommendation actually also goes in the customer. A lot of possibilities. Now this is not good. This is not going to work because I need to remove the thing here.
If you would like to, let's say, investigate satellite with this one, we would have to.
It depends.
Is there a way how we could somehow get the logs easier agent and analyze it?
Oh yes, there will be at some point. Rel MCP server for syslog.
Right.
I mean, why not?
And my last question: have you thought about implementing some kind let's say I have some problem, like, okay, generate a hammer command that I can execute,
So I mean, I've been showing that basically that it is generating hammer commands. But if that's the case, I would maybe drop another agent which has explicitly, the configuration or the instructions to always generate the hammer commands with explanations, and you're not that far away from basically asking the agent, can you generate from a shell script or anything else, that can just run there based on the actual data in my satellite system. Whether this is going to work out of the box, it's hard to say, right? And maybe you have to set up guardrails, like don't do more than 2 or 3, whatever, atomic, actions. It's like, I have the system there, but in order to achieve something with that system, I need to do 6, 7 other things. Before that, the chance that this will fail is really big, right? But yeah, why not? I think it's fairly possible, especially if that's hammer, right? Because you can factor in a nice documentation there, etc. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, basically. Now, if you ask it, generate me an Ansible playbook, that's another story. Because we don't have such documentation. There is no such context that you can add. It's just going to invent something. Even if you provide as context the Ansible modules, like the Foreman collection.
There's quite
There is, but I tried a couple of times and it didn't work out of the box. So maybe there is, like needed 50 people to spend time on it, not a single person, right? So. Okay. Well, that took longer than expected, but it seems like we had the time. All right. Well, thank you all, and yeah, have a nice day.